Hello, everyone out there in YouTube world, Facebook world, social media world, the world. Welcome to another edition of Musings with MGL. I'm your host, as always, MGL. If you like what I have to say on the channel, as always, I got to get this out of the way. Make sure you click the subscribe button, like, share, click the notification bell, ding, 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 so you get to know all the cool stuff that I'm putting out on here. So today's topic is going to be all the rage currently in the gun community right now, and that is, of course, this shooting that took place at a protest in Austin, Texas. Okay, so I'm going to run through the facts real quick and then kind of give you my thoughts on what's going on there. This is from the Dallas Morning News, and the headline is, "Will anyone face charges for fatally shooting Austin protester Garrett Foster? Legal experts said the case against the driver who allegedly killed the protester will hinge on whether it was done in self-defense." Police released a driver accused of killing Garrett Foster at an Austin protest this weekend, raising questions about whether the shooter will face charges. The Dallas Morning News talked to legal experts about what could happen in the case. The driver, who police have not identified, could still face criminal charges depending on the findings of the investigation and the decision of Travis County prosecutors, or the driver could walk free. Experts said the case hinges on whether the driver has a solid self-defense claim. Okay, and you can read the rest of this article. Here's what happened. Accounts of what happened vary according to the Austin Police Department, and this is, of course, the major issue in the case. Okay, I'm going to try and attempt to sum up what I understand happened based on my reading and watching other videos and things that are going on out there. So you have this protest going on in Austin, Texas. Okay, and Austin, Texas is an open carry state as it relates to rifles. So you don't need to have a special permit for that. Handguns you do, but for rifles you don't. So they were having another one of these protests. Okay, standard protests that's going on out there. Like them, don't like them, whatever. It's a protest that's going on out there. So there's an individual at the protest, we'll call him protester, who is there with his girlfriend, female protester, who's in a wheelchair. So his girlfriend is actually quadriplegic, so she's in a wheelchair. So he is at this protest and with her, and he is open carrying an AK-47. So he has an AK-47 just slung on his back that he's carrying while he's out there protesting, perfectly legal in the state of Texas, okay? And he's pushing the quadriplegic girlfriend in a wheelchair. As what happens in a lot of these protests is they start blocking a street, okay? So all the protesters start blocking a street. And we've seen videos of this before. They block a street. Non-protester, who we'll just call shooter for the purposes of this narration, comes upon this protest that's now blocking the street, all right? And while the protest is going on, protester and protester girlfriend are in the street, and he's, again, pushing her in a wheelchair. At some point, shooter's car gets surrounded by protesters. Now, protester and his girlfriend, according to the protester's dead, so he can't make any statements, but according to the girlfriend and other witnesses, they claim that protester was peacefully pushing the handicapped quadriplegic girlfriend in his wheelchair, and the guy with the car comes and acts like he's going to run them over, basically, in this protest. So you have this scenario that we see all the time where people are blocking roads, other people in cars are trying to get through, and you have this convergence of events. People start surrounding the car, so protesters start surrounding the car, and protester with AK-47 comes up to the car while it's being surrounded by these other people. Here's where you get the varying stories. So protester group claim that protester never pointed AK-47 at shooter or never did anything threatening at shooter. He was just peacefully carrying his AK-47 at a protest/riot. Car starts getting surrounded. Shooter inside car starts being fearful for his safety because car is being surrounded. And shooter inside car says that AK-47 protester actually pointed the AK-47 at him while he was in his car being surrounded by all of these people. And so he pulled out his firearm and shoots AK-47 protester dead. All right? That's the overall sequence of events that happens. So again, you've got the varying stories. So protester and his group, he's dead again, but the girl and the people in the group say he was the aggressor in the car. He tried to run over the girl in a wheelchair, but at no point did anybody point a gun at him or put him in fear for his life. He just went crazy and pulled out a gun and shot the guy for no reason. Unjustifiable shooting. He should be prosecuted for murder, okay? Car shooter says, no, I find myself driving down the road. I come up in the middle of this protest. I didn't try and run anybody over. I start getting surrounded by all of these people, and here comes this guy in the middle of a protest pointing an AK-47 at me, so I was in fear, shot the guy, and that's why he's dead, okay? So you've got conflicting stories, as you often do in these self-defense cases. There's videos. They're trying to round up all the different cell phone videos of all the people that were there. But, of course, if you're on the side of the protester, you're not going to voluntarily turn over your cell phone video if it shows the protester pointing his AK-47 because you don't want the protester to get in trouble. And vice versa. If for some reason there's a video that's on the side of the shooter that shows the shooter being justified or not being justified, they're not going to release that. So you're going to try and gather all this cell phone footage, but I don't know if that's going to be the end-all and be-all of what happened there. But this demonstrates the problem that can happen when all of these situations are going on in our country, okay? Protesters, y'all got to stop surrounding cars and blocking traffic. I mean, I'm just going to say it. Because when you're blocking traffic and you start surrounding cars, people are going to start shooting, all right? If you're protesting, stay on the sidewalk, stay in the safe area or whatever. Don't impede people's ability to get to work or where they're going because all you're going to do is end up pissing people off. And then when you start surrounding their cars, that could be the most idiotic thing you can do because any normal person who finds himself in their car surrounded by a bunch of people trying to pound on the car or break the windows or get in is automatically going to be in fear, and they're going to gun it. They're going to get out of there. They're going to pull their firearm or whatever. It's going to happen, okay? So stop surrounding these cars at these protests. That's my advice for you protesters. Stop blocking traffic and stop surrounding cars, and these incidents won't happen, okay? And I'm not going to tell people to not open carry at protests because then that would go both ways because oftentimes we in the Second Amendment crowd like to do protests and we like to open carry firearms when they do those protests. So I certainly wouldn't call for like a blanket rule about it. However, you'll note when you see the pro-Second Amendment people protesting and open carrying firearms, they ain't blocking cars. They're not surrounding cars. They're not being confrontational. They're always peacefully marching down the street, open carrying their firearms, but not causing any trouble, not looking to start a fight, not looking to shoot anybody, not looking to block traffic. They're not causing any problem. So I don't want a blanket rule about open carrying at the protest, but there's certainly a difference between walking peacefully down the street, open carrying, and open carrying while you're blocking traffic and surrounding a vehicle, okay? Especially, obviously, if you point the firearm at the guy. So there are like levels of self-defense that could be claimed up and down this case. So the protester, he's dead, but let's say he wasn't. The protester could have claimed self-defense by saying that guy tried to run over myself and my quadriplegic girlfriend with his car, so I had to point my gun at him in self-defense because he was trying to run us over. Then the guy inside the car is going to say it was self-defense for me to pull out my gun and shoot the guy, the AK-47 protester, because he's now pointing a gun at me. So then he's going to claim self-defense. And then there was even another shooter who, after the shooting occurred, the shooter tried to drive off, and one of the other protesters started shooting at that guy because he was trying to drive off, and that guy's going to say that I was acting in self-defense because I was trying to stop a murderer from leaving the scene. So up and down the dial here, you can see self-defense claim after self-defense claim after self-defense claim. And ultimately, this whole thing is just a tragic incident because this is what's going to happen when you throw all of these things into the same mix. When you start having protests or riots or whatever the hell you want to call them, when you do things like block traffic and surround cars, you're going to cause problems. When you open carry at a protest where you're blocking traffic and surrounding cars, you're going to have problems. When you have a heightened sense of people in their cars who are just trying to get somewhere and they're going to be frustrated that they can't get somewhere or they're going to be scared, they're going to start carrying their own firearms to protect themselves against the protesters who are also now carrying firearms and blocking the street. So then the protesters are going to say, well, then now we need more firearms. And the cops are going to say, but we don't want to go in there and do things because we don't want to escalate things. Or they're going to go in there and they're going to get overly zealous when they try and quash these things, and that's going to cause even more problems. So this case is probably the perfect convergence of all of the issues that are going on with these protests that are happening in these major cities around America. And you're going to start seeing more and more of these incidents occur because they're just going to be unavoidable. They're just going to be unavoidable. You've got all of the things going into the mix about what could happen here, and they're simply going to be unavoidable. So what's my opinion about the case? My opinion is they're going to have a hard time proving that this guy was not in fear for his life to justify the shooting. There's clearly going to be no argument that this guy was carrying an AK-47 at his protest because everybody admits that. There's clearly not going to be an argument that people weren't surrounding the cars because everybody admits that. Whether it was justified surrounding the car because he allegedly tried to run over the quadriplegic woman or it was not justified surrounding the car, there's no dispute that people were surrounding the car and that the guy on the outside of the car had the AK-47. Is there going to be a dispute about whether it was pointed at him or not? Obviously, there is going to be. The article and everything else will tell you that the stories may vary. But unless they're going to unless somebody can produce a cell phone that makes it clear that the guy with the AK-47 never took it off his shoulder, never pointed it at anybody, and did nothing but stand there and hold the push rails on his girlfriend's car, on his girlfriend's wheelchair, and he just got shot out of nowhere. Unless you can find a definitive video like that, I don't see how there's any way they're going to be able to make charges stick against this guy. Now, as we've seen in St. Louis, that doesn't mean that they're not going to try and file charges. It doesn't mean that they're not going to make this political and try and file charges just to get the guy and make a point. Okay, Austin is a very liberal city. It may be in Texas, but it is a very liberal Texas city. So it wouldn't surprise me if this guy once again decides to be made an example out of by some prosecutors down there, some elected officials. However, to their credit, unlike, they haven't arrested him. They didn't arrest him yet. They interviewed him and they let him go because they're trying to figure out what's going on. So I'll at least give them credit that they do seem to be waiting to do a full investigation before they figure it out. But now when you look at, all the left-wing newspapers out there, the New York Times, USA Today, or whatever, all the stories are about how peaceful this guy was and how he just had unconditional love for his quadriplegic girlfriend. And of course, his parents, as they always do in these cases, are coming out and saying he wouldn't hurt a fly, he wouldn't do anything. But you know what? If you're going to be in a protest and you're going to open carry your firearm, you shouldn't try blocking streets and you shouldn't surround cars, and you should probably somewhat expect that you open carrying that firearm, whether it's your right or not. And I'll say this: left side, right side, pro-Second Amendment or anti-Second Amendment, whatever. You shouldn't be open carrying like that in a thing because, it's okay if you do it, but you should expect that it's going to cause some issues and raise some eyebrows, especially if, again, you're going to start blocking traffic and surrounding cars. So you protesters out there, if you want to protest for a legitimate cause like everybody else in the country, I'm for it. But you got to stop blocking these roads and you got to stop surrounding these cars, because if you continue to do that, especially while armed, you're going to get shot, and there's going to be more of these things out there. So that's my take on that. It's a hot button issue going on right now. I wanted to give my thoughts on it out there. I think they're going to have a hard time proving self-defense in this guy. It sounds like from everything I've seen, it was a justifiable shoot, and I just continue to give warnings to people out there. Look, everybody in Texas is carrying a gun. Austin can be a very liberal city, but just because it's a liberal city, it's still a liberal city in Texas, and they all walk around carrying the guns out there. So if you're going to be doing these kind of protests out there, you might be able to get away with it in a place like Portland or Seattle where nobody has any firearms. But if you're going to do that kind of stuff in a place like Texas, these are the things that are going to keep happening. As long as these protests keep escalating, they keep stopping traffic, they keep blocking cars, and everybody starts arming themselves, you're going to have more of these incidents out there. So just keep that in mind if you're going to protest, or if you're going to drive around and may run into one. It's scary times out there, so be careful, all right? So as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Once again, stay open if you can. But as always, for particular reasons like this, you need to carry on.